All right, the Sixers struggling to close out there in the fourth. And look who's here, Jackie Mack. Always good to see you joining the debate. And Jackie, we'll get to you in just a minute. But I'm going to start with Stephen A. on this one because, you know, spent a lot of time in Philly. Stephen A., tell me this. Are you concerned about the Sixers here?
Well, I'm very concerned because there's always something wrong with the Philadelphia 76ers. 1 minute it's Joel Embiid shooting jump shots, not attacking the basket, or we're questioning his motor. Another minute it's not only Ben Simmons refusing to shoot three-pointers, but it's going against the wishes of his coach, who said in the offseason that that was something that was going to change because he needed more of a perimeter threat. Then we go through the season and we expected big things from them, but they were struggling to be a top 4, top 5 seed. Then they get this 4.5-month break because of the pandemic. They come back out, and in these first few games, particularly the last two, they give up 46 points in the fourth quarter against Indiana. They give up 43, against San Antonio. And oh, by the way, in that game against Indiana, some dude named T.J. Warren, we couldn't tell the difference whether it was him or it was James Harden that was scorching the Philadelphia 76ers. The brother dropped 53 points, 19 of them coming in the fourth quarter. Oh, by the way, in these fourth quarters, the Sixers have surrendered 75% shooting from the field and 69% shooting from three-point range. These are deplorable defensive statistics, and when you're playing in a division or in a conference that has Milwaukee led by the Greek Freak, but surrounded by dudes who can shoot the basketball, Toronto and Van Vliet and Lowry and others who can shoot, and an emerging star in Pascal Siakam who can play, and oh, by the way, they have the experience of being the reigning defending champions, who, by the way, went through the Sixers in order to do it. Then you've got a team like Boston with Jason Tatum having ascended. Kemba Walker, we're hoping, will get better. Oh, by the way, Jaylen Brown can ball significantly well, by the way, especially when you watched him shoot the basketball the other night. These are the kind of things that we have to pay attention to when we're looking at the Sixers in the Eastern Conference. So they need to be concerned, but it's not just because of these last two games in the fourth quarter. It's because they're one of those teams where there always seems to be something. We've got a question about one star. We've got a question about another star. We got a question about a $100 million dude in Al Horford that they brought, but they now have coming off the bench because they weren't effective enough with him in the starting lineup. You got a guy in Shake Milton who, by the way, saved the day yesterday because he hit that three, with about 7 seconds left. And of course, there's always questions as to whether or not the coach, Brett Brown, really has their ear. We know he knows what he's doing. We know that he can coach in terms of X's and O's, but can he get the pulse of his players to get them to do what he needs them to do? All of these huge question marks are the kind of things you can't afford if you're the 76ers and you're trying to take advantage of this opportunity and win a championship.
I am concerned about the Sixers, and I'll just make it simple. They don't shoot it well enough. That was the concern going into the season. You gave up a lot of shooting, but they got back. Richardson's the kind of guy, like, if he's shooting it well that year, he'll shoot it just well enough that you have some shooting there from a guy who can play defense. But Ben Simmons doesn't even shoot the ball at all. It's not that he can't shoot, he just won't even shoot it at all. And then, so who else do you have? Embiid has never been a good enough three-point shooter to really have him taking a lot of three-point shots. Shake is a nice player. I mean, he showed a lot of fortitude. He had a terrible game, and then he bounced back and hit a game winner. Good for him, and he has shot the three well, but he's not like a totally high usage kind of player you're going to run your offense through. The guy who can shoot it is Tobias Harris, who's a very good offensive player, but only a good shooter. He's not a great shooter. He's a good shooter, and that's the best guy they got. They just, in the modern NBA, you have to shoot it better than the Sixers to win, most likely. Now, it's not that it's impossible to, I don't think, as long as guys are taking threes and Richardson's hitting them at a decent enough pace and Shake is and Tobias Harris is, because of how high the talents are pitched of Ben Simmons and Embiid. Their talents are pitched so high that given the rest of the stuff, maybe they could do it if they're coached up just right. They finally figured out that Horford simply can't play with Embiid, and they have that figured out. But Stephen A., I will give you credit on this one. You have been the one questioning Brett Brown as a coach and saying that you don't know if he has the kind of level to get this thing done. And it's not, and I think he's a good coach, but it's going to take a great coach to win the way this team is constructed. Someone's going to, like a couple guys are going to have to start shooting it better.
He's a good coach and he's a good man, but can he get the pulse of the
So,
players? That's what I want to know.
So I know my role here, guys. My role is just to calm everybody down. It's only been 2 games in the bubble. Let's all get off the Sixers' back. But you know what? Can't do it for you. I'm really concerned about the Sixers. And it's because one thing, Max, that you could always count on the Sixers to do, even when all this mental gymnastics was going on, and it is always going on, they always defended. And now, in the first 2 games back, they've given up 127 points, 130 points. That's a problem. That's a problem that didn't exist before the pandemic hit. Now, during that time off, everybody was clamoring for Brett Brown to make a decision to do something different. He did. He moved Ben Simmons to power forward, Shake Milton to the point guard. We all applauded it. It was going to be beautiful. It was going to work. Well, Ben Simmons is struggling. Josh Richardson has all but disappeared, and he's a very important player for them. And Shake Milton did hit that big shot, and that was great to see, but struggled mightily in the first game, and still defensively is still growing on the job. So concern, you bet. Here's the thing about the Sixers. Every time I look at them, I think they have 2 generational players. I'm not saying anything new here. Embiid, Ben Simmons, I think exceptional, rare talents with rare skill sets. And yet, you look at them, the body language is bad. This is a team that, for whatever reason, it doesn't fit. And I don't think a whole bunch of months off has made them fit any better.
You know, Jackie, and I'm really interested in getting your perspective on this because you'll know this being the exceptional NBA reporter that you've been for so many years. If you remember, the Miami Heat during the regular season, months before the pandemic kicked in, blew the Philadelphia 76ers out in Miami. And there was noise after that game that the entire team got on a flight and returned, but Ben Simmons had stayed on because, he had, his, personal situations. I'm not talking about anything negative or catastrophic. I'm just saying he had stayed behind. And people were pointing the finger at him at that particular moment in time because it's like when you just got blown out, it ain't about leisure at that particular moment in time. You get on the team, on the plane with the rest of your teammates. That's a small thing. But it's emblematic of the kind of things that have taken place as we talk about Brett Brown. Because what I've religiously pointed out is that no one's ever questioned his knowledge of the game of basketball, his X's and O's, even though there were some questionable decisions I thought he made a couple of years ago in the postseason when he was going up against Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics. But in the end, what it comes down to is that when you look at the Sixers right now, I told them this. Remember, at home, they were nearly unbeatable. On the road, they struggled to win. They were like 10-24 on the road. As a guy that reported for the Philadelphia Inquirer for 17 years, I've watched this team, and I know how they feed off that crowd at the Wells Fargo Center. And devoid of that, something is missing. When they are away from the Wells Fargo Center and that crowd imploring them to defend, something goes missing. I don't know what it is, but in this instance, it's showing up on the defensive end of the floor, and I don't know if they can fix it in time. Your thoughts?
I agree with you. You know what's missing? I'll tell you what's missing. Jimmy Butler is what's missing. Go back to the Sixers last year when they're in the postseason and they're 1, 4, 5, and 6 bounce of a Kawhi Leonard jump shot from maybe moving on. And Jimmy Butler in those games, if you remember, guys, first of all, we know how tenacious he is defensively. But second of all, he was their closer. He was closing out those games offensively for them. He was so important to them. And look, he didn't want to stay there. He'll tell us all someday. I think we've all heard little inklings of why. But he's what's missing. If you want to talk about last year to this year and what the difference is, I think it's that.
Well, it's also the fact
guys,
that he had on Joel Embiid, because Joel Embiid, Max, loves